Welcome to Behind the Biz, conversations with artists and entertainment. I'm your host, Meghann Mason. Please subscribe here on YouTube and don't forget to follow us on Instagram. Now, on to the show. Welcome to Behind the Biz, Bryan.
Hello.
Hello.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So just to do a quick introduction, this is kind of a special episode, if you will, of Behind the Biz that I wanted to do because I love movies. I love talking about movies. I love trivia about movies. And I was lucky enough to have Bryan. This is Bryan Wiersma, who was my, oh, there's sirens in the background. It's very epic. Oh my goodness. The office is near a fire station. It's very exciting. Bryan was my roommate in Las Vegas for about 5 years. And during that time, we would have late night chats when we got home from work. Late. We're talking like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning when we got off work. And we would talk about everything, politics, movies, TV shows, and we watched a ton of them together. Bryan is a carpenter at Cirque du Soleil's Ka. He has an amazing eclectic taste in life.
That's one way to put it, yeah.
Yeah. And I thought he would be really fun to kick off this series of special episodes called We Love Movies, a Fanatical Chat, where literally we talk about the movies we love, how they shaped us and influenced people around us. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Again, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. You'd be hard-pressed to find two people who, upon first sight, are more wildly different than Meghann and I. That's the crazy thing about, when I met her, because I had worked with her for a while, and she's just sort of passing through the hallways and things like that. And then at some point, I was looking for a place to stay, so she had a room. And I was like, okay, let's see how this goes. And, it was, even though we're so wildly different on different paths, we come together at the same exact love for stuff and passions for things. And so we just naturally are able to just kind of back and forth real, like she said, till 5 in the morning.
Yeah, it was crazy. Some of those mornings talking about stuff were watching different shows and binging them. There was a definite camaraderie when it came to film and television and music that is hard to rival. So I thought this would be really fun to talk with you. Obviously, this is a topic we could go on and on about. So it was very hard to narrow it down to what we would talk about today. I think we did. We're going to try and stay within the parameters of kind of the late 70s, the 80s. I was born in 80. You're a little bit older than me.
I was born in 74.
74. Okay. So, yeah. I mean, both of us watch movies from all time periods and genres. So, but I feel like talking about the movies that kind of shaped us in the, mid to late 70s through the 80s and even a little tiny bit into the early 90s would be really fun because there are some amazing films.
Amazing.
Oh, it was so fun working on the list, doing this.
There's a lot on that list. There's a lot on that list. And when I first started kind of going through, I was like, okay, so what are the movies that shaped me? That's a big question for anyone. And I think anybody can go back in their history and be like, when I was, 3, 4, whatever it was, mine was Star Wars, obviously. I was 3, barely out of diapers. And and you go back there and that's where that love affair begins, is that first time when you're sitting in that dark cinema and those lights go out and you're just like, oh my God, it's an incredible experience. And there's nothing like it. Streaming can't come close, anything like that. And, and there is something to be said for the act of going to a movie theater and sitting down with a purpose of, I'm going to watch this thing. I paid money to watch this thing. It's not, I can't switch to something else. And it's a very all-encompassing feeling. And I think you share that as well. When you talk about movies, you talk about how just it envelops you. And a good movie can really there's an escapism to it. You know, it's very true. There's a very big element of escapism, and we all have a lot to escape from, you know, our daily lives, whatnot. But you know, it affects everyone in very different ways, and you know, it's very easy to be passionate about.
Yeah, the impressions that they leave. You know, I talk about magic a lot, the magic of film, the magic of theater, the magic of music and dance. And I think that the magic of going to a movie theater and the smells, it's completely all encompassing in every sense. And so you have the smells, you have the seats. You know, I like this movie theater because they have these seats and they have that pickle, which is a thing that is very big here in Texas, is the movie pickles. But I digress.
We'll talk about that on another podcast.
So going back to when you were younger and Star Wars came out, I mean, obviously I watched it because I have a twin brother and his whole bedroom was Star Wars. So I watched it on the periphery, but I was paying more attention than I thought I was, because when they came out later and they had digitally enhanced some of the original ones, I was like, that was not in that movie.
Yeah.
I don't remember that weird droid. But what is it? Because I've watched you watch trailers from the new Star Wars movies and tears were involved.
Please tell me you have a clip of that.
I do.
Yes.
No, not for today, but I do. I'll share it on the Instagram page. What is it about Star Wars that moves you so much?
There's a couple of things. Obviously, it was like like I said, it was my first movie experience. I was 78, so yeah, I'm like 3, 4. I'm like really little, and I remember getting dragged to like the shitty movie theater in Torrance to go see it at Old Town Mall. If anybody from South Bay is listening. And I just like, it was an experience, and I remember like that was before the days you could buy stuff online and things like that. And it was before you could, have access to the internet and things like that. So we had to wait in a line. And I remember going there at age 3. We had to wait through, I think, 2 viewings to get in. Oh, and like it was, and I mean, I just remember it was just this massive line of just out of control kids and like a puppet show. Like it was crazy. But I do remember going in there and that first time, because I'd seen TV before that point, and just going in there, and then that was back when they still did the curtain thing where they opened the curtain.
Oh yeah.
And like we were crammed all the way up in the front. And it was like me, my mom, my sister, and just from that opening shot, it was my mom. She was like, "I knew your world changed when I saw the look on your face. That like as soon as that ship comes over," and it just excited me. It was something I'd never seen before.
Music.
We could do a whole other episode on the music. Yes, John Williams is one of my all-time faves. But the other thing that I really enjoyed about Star Wars, which for me sets aside science fiction from good science fiction from bad science fiction, is the fact that as you're watching it, it wasn't this clean line Kubrick-y sort of space, like really space looking, like everything was a piece of junk. The world looked like it was running down, and everything had these questions. Every little character droid you saw, you were like, wait a minute, what about that guy? Like, how come he's doing? And like I just remember it was so just sort of matter of fact laid out. It wasn't in your face or anything like that, but it was very much a very real feeling world. And I remember that feeling of like, I know what it feels like to walk around on that planet where it's going to be hot. Like my kid said when she saw Star Wars, I'll bet it's hot. So,
and the dirt, I remember so viscerally the sand.
Everything's dirty. Yeah.
I remember that as a kid watching it and just being like, they have sand everywhere. Like it's everywhere. And I just have a mental picture of Luke walking across the sand, and it's like this little snippet of a scene, but it's one that's emblazoned in my memory. Probably because he was hot, and I don't like being hot.
No, that's very true. And it's just one of those movies that I feel it's full of very iconic visual moments, dialogue, things like that. But you can go almost anywhere on the planet, and you can talk Star Wars with most people. Yeah. But there's just all these very iconic shots that a lot of them they stole from Casablanca and things like that, which I didn't find out till later. But
Yeah.
you know, and it holds true that it's like it was good then, it's good now, it'll be good if you do it right, you know, in the future. And I think part of what shows is that when you watch that, it's you really feel like the director George Lucas believed in his vision. He didn't care what anybody else had to say. You know, he had a hell of a time making that movie.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to back him. Nobody wanted to, you know, give him funding. And the crew was like, who is this guy? So,
yeah, because he hadn't done anything really big up until then. Not really. I mean.
No, he did American Graffiti was the first one he did.
Right. But to go, and what I mean by that is to have like, you have this one successful thing and to present Star Wars as your next project and be like, and I need all of this money.
And I need all of this money, and we don't know how we're going to do this. And that was the other thing. It was, they were making stuff up on the fly.
Yeah. And it's so iconic how, like you said, I mean, there's so many scenes in it that mean something to people. Like so many guys had like these sexual awakenings with Princess Leia and being a slave. And, you know,
Yeah.
I remember being like, oh my gosh, Han Solo's so handsome. As like a little 5-year-old, I don't know what that means, but I just remember thinking like, he's so handsome. And gosh, I hope he wins and that octopus thing doesn't eat them in the... Some of it was very terrifying.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Because suspense like that had not really been done. And that's that's the quaint thing, like the kind of like what I consider quaint about the movie is it's totally told from a serial, like a 1950s serial point of view. Every 15, 20 minutes, you're in another like, oh my God, are they going to get out of this situation?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, oh, they made it through. And to this day, I can watch the original Star Wars right up until the end. I don't think they're going to blow up the Death Star. That's how good it is. For whatever reason, I'm never convinced, like, no, he's not going to make it this time. Like there's another cut that they filmed that I know is on here, you know,
somewhere.
And it's those moments that you can watch again and again and again that keep coming back to you with that same visceral, like, you know, Spielberg, same thing. You know, he has a lot of those movies. Raiders of the Lost Ark was, you know, a big one like that.
You know, it's really interesting looking at George Lucas as a writer because, you know, him and Spielberg were, you know, lifelong friends, and him writing the Indiana Jones movies and then Spielberg directing them, that relationship is so crazy. But also the Ewok movies. We have to talk about the Ewoks for a second because they're my
Ewoks, man.
Well, I had a Wicket piggy bank. I was like all about Wicket. I thought he was the cutest. I wanted him as my friend. I wanted him as my pet. I think the movies did not get enough love. But he wrote that one too. And I was just like, I think that the talent that George Lucas has for writing and keeping the story rolling, like with Indiana Jones and all of those movies, just bam, bam, bam. It's just, like you said, it's so situational. And his relationship with Spielberg was iconic when you look at their body of work together.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What's your favorite Indiana Jones?
Of the three that were made?
Of the three. We're going to go with the original three.
We're going to go with the original three. I'm going to have to give it to the first one, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Just because, again, that is another iconic moment in my childhood, and I'll tell you that quick story in a minute here. I think they're all good. I'm with you on your pick on what your favorite movie is. That's actually my second favorite. I love Last Crusade for Sean Connery and everything. I thought it was a brilliant movie. Definitely, I would say the best made one, but the first one is still my favorite.
Yeah, I think because I didn't see the Raiders of the Lost Ark first, for whatever reason, I don't know why as a kid. I think my dad might disagree, but I don't remember seeing that one first. I remember seeing Temple of Doom, and that is the one I've seen the most. And I love Kate Capshaw. Oh my God. Like,
yes. She is. Yeah, she is. Of the girls, I think she is my favorite because she is the complete opposite of Indy. And it's like, how the hell is this going to work? And then you see it and it's like, brilliant. Bro, it doesn't, and it works because it doesn't, and that's the best part about that.
Oh yeah, it's great, and it's a very provocative statement to be like, she's my favorite, because people either love her or hate her. Like, it's not a, she was fine. Like, people are very upset about her, but I love her. I can quote all of her lines on the elephant, putting perfume on him, and he would be dead if I was involved in getting him out of the bug tunnel.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely not. See you later.
Bye. Yeah. So sad. I'm going to have to write an obituary for Indiana Jones, because there is 0 ways that those bugs would be on me or in my hair.
And let's take a minute and talk about that scene in particular, because I distinctly remember, and like, the Raiders, the Indiana Jones series always have creepy crawlies, always, in some form or another. And I remember the spiders from the first one and the snakes and everything like that. And when they got to the bugs and we were watching it, I remember I saw it with my dad, and we were sitting on the big screen, and the sound of the bugs around you. And I remember that was probably one of the first times in the movie I felt like, I'm not okay with this at all. And I thought I would be. I was like, God, I'm a boy. I got bugs. It's totally cool. And I was like, oh my God, there's so many of them. And
they're so big.
And those are all real, is the crazy thing. Like, they made her do that. And that I love that Spielberg made that decision. Like, hey, you want to be in the movie? We're going to cover you in bugs.
I'm surprised she married him after that. That would be literally a deal breaker for me. I would be like, did you remember how big that centipede looking thing was that crawled up in her hair?
Every minor fight, I'd be bringing that shit up.
You make bugs, I win, hands down.
Yeah. Absolutely.
He would be dead, and then she has to like reach through the thing, and there's like the spider webs and stuff, and her hands going in there. Oh, it makes me want to throw up.
That is another scene that I also believe every time I watch it that he's gonna die in front of me. I really do.
I remember that it crushes his hat, like it's
where he's like, we are going to die, and every time I see it, I'm like, you are this time. You may have gotten out the last 900 times I've seen this movie, but this time I know it's going to go differently.
They're so good. I remember Bixie, your daughter, watching it, and we would kind of stop it before they get to the when they go into the cave, and it's like, okay, we'll save this rest of this for later when you're older. Yeah, and the melting, and oh my God. Okay.
So yeah, kind of going back to touch on my Raiders story about seeing Raiders Lost Ark for the first time. So Raiders Lost Ark was my mother's attempt at like a rainy day of like, there's a movie out. It's got Han Solo from Star Wars in it. It's about a biblical artifact, and he's a professor. So in my head, my mom, and she, like, one of her Sunday school teacher friends was like, oh yeah, we saw this movie, it's great, this and that. Like, I think your kid will like it. It's about Han Solo. So she's like, great. So she drags me to this movie under the impression of like, I'm going to like, this is going to be an educational experience and this and that. And she's selling it like, yeah, it's got Han Solo in it. And like, I'm like, okay. And she's completely game. And then again, like, the story she has of like looking over at that first point where like the spikes come out and the corpse is on it, like when he's walking through the cave. And it's that first moment, and she goes, I looked over, and she goes, and I knew there was no way I was dragging out of that theater. And she goes, I had immediate regrets. Like, as soon as it started, like, shit, he's got a gun, this is not good, and
hold on to your pants, because his face is going to melt off.
Oh, absolutely. And that was the thing, like, it just, and that's another movie that's just full of these like very visceral, iconic moments that I pull up a lot in my head, when I'm, it's a beautiful movie, and, Harrison Ford at his finest, man.
Well, this is why I wanted to kind of talk about Spielberg a little bit, because when I was when I just in my own memory think about movies that I grew up with in the 80s, I mean, there's like 15 just right off the bat, that he did either directed or produced. And so when I was actually looking back through them, they're amazing. And I have so many memories. Also, so many of them are inappropriate. I cannot believe that I was allowed to watch.
So inappropriate.
Like the 80s, I don't understand why we were allowed to watch some of the things we did because they're wildly inappropriate for children.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
You know, it's like, okay, let's talk about, let's see, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
My mom loves this movie.
Yeah.
We rewatched it. Well, we took Pixie to see it at the movie theater.
You and I went to go see it in the theaters. Yeah, I hadn't seen it in the theaters
re-released
yet.
it.
Yeah.
And it was really amazing to see. Like that movie came out in, when did that come out? Close Encounters. It was like the late 70s, like 77, something like that.
Yeah, it was one of his earlier works.
And to watch her watch it as like, I think she was 7, and just being absolutely enraptured, with the tones and stuff. And they said that, John Williams and him went back and forth, that he wanted like 7 tones, and Spielberg was like, no, I need like 5 tones because that 7 is too long for some alien ship to say hello.
Yeah.
And then they had like 150 choices to choose from at some point when they got through all of them. And then that's what they settled on. And to watch the 7-year-old, 30 plus years later, watch it and still just be like, what? And the mashed potato thing is still funny.
Oh, yeah.
Richard Dreyfuss is amazing. But Jaws will never be the same getting in the water.
No. And I love that movies are capable of having that impact, and that's a big one because Jaws really, like, that thing came out and it was literally Psycho with sharks.
Guess who's not going swimming at night? That person got what they deserved at the beginning of the movie. I'm like, you are crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, you're gonna get in the water, and then you add the music. He traumatized like everybody for the rest of their lives with that music.
Well, that and again, Spielberg has a very specific thing that his movies feel like to me when I watch them, which is I feel like I know what it's like to be there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's very good about, even in like the super fantastical ones, he still takes you as an audience member and he puts you in that seat of like, you're Alice in Wonderland, you're going through the looking glass, I'm taking you. There's nothing you can do. And he really makes you feel like you're exploring this world as it goes, and it feels real. And be it down to like, his Tom Hanks newspaper drama, to like Raiders, to any of his stuff, it always has that feel of like, yeah, I know what that feels like. Like, I know exactly what he's going through, and he's just very good at connecting with that human, thing in his movies.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the people that, and this is a sidebar, looking at the movies that he's done, like with Tom Hanks, because he's so relatable, that you can kind of put yourself in his position. Yeah. And even like Joe versus the Volcano that he produced, I watched that over and over. But how many people, especially this day and age, are Joe? And they're in corporate America, and they're bored out of their minds, and they need an adventure and all of these things. But did you ever see Always?
I loved Always. I cried my eyes out.
I haven't rewatched it in probably over a decade because it's so upsetting.
I think that was, excuse me. I think that was one of the first Spielberg movies I saw that was like of a more like serious sort of, of this earth tone. And I remember I was like a teenager or something like that, and I remember sitting in the theater just weeping, like and I just stopped pretending. I'm like, I'm going to stop pretending I'm not sad. I'm just going to sit here. Like, it was good, man. It was, It
was just brilliant. And, you have Richard Dreyfuss, who he has such a mixed bag of a career between drama and comedy. And I feel like this movie was almost the perfect blend.
Yes.
With him and John Goodman too. Like, it was so nice to see him in a film that, he gets emotional. And of course, Holly Hunter's like amazing.
Yes.
But that's a hard one for me to watch, but I love it so much. But again, it's always the protagonist that you feel like you could be them. You could be friends with John Goodman, you could.
Yeah. You feel like you can go get a beer at the bar with a guy. Like you can sit and chat with them, and that goes a long way when it comes to like writing characters. There's a well-written character. You really feel like, yeah, I would either like get a beer with this guy or like punch him in the throat with a bar stool. Like, if it's not well written, you don't care either way.
It's so true.
Yeah.
The actors can only save it so much.
Yeah, it is true. Another Spielberg favorite of mine that I know is also of yours and my daughter is Hook.
Oh, yes.
Wonderful movie.
Me.
And I liked his take on the pirates and Peter Pan, and like he gave it enough of a twist and enough of that whimsy, but again, you are sitting with Robin Williams going through this ride of this is what this would feel like. And he made it really believable to however the hell he did that with all the stuff going on. But it felt real.
It did, and I still to this day quote that movie. Whenever the little heavier set black kid, it's the little black kid when he's smushing his face and he says, "Oh, there you are, Peter." And I say it all the time when I realize something. And I think that's also telling of your age when people don't know what you're quoting.
It's very true. It's very true.
Like, first of all, you need to see this movie because it's amazing. But it's also a little bit dark, Hook, at times.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that he kept that tie between the fantastical Peter Pan world and the real world that he's from, quote unquote. But like that line you said, where he's squishing his face and he goes, "There you are, Peter." I still just thinking about it, I still kind of chokes me up a little bit because it's like, and it's this kid, he sees it, and it's really beautifully done, man.
Oh, Hook is so great. Later on in the early 90s, Schindler's List was a huge game changer for me.
Schindler's List, yeah.
Because it came out in 93, and so I was 12 or 13 at that time. And that was kind of when I started to really get interested in World War II. Mm-hmm. That then has since become an obsession. And watching Schindler's List, I remember being like, "Oh my God, who is the bad guy? Ray Fiennes, like he's so beautiful." So that began a lifelong love of him. But
dreamy.
That movie was so unbelievable, and the soundtrack, which the violinist is Itzhak Perlman, it still breaks my heart to this day, and it's such a personal project for Spielberg that. Do you watch ice skating? Do we ever talk about ice skating?
A little bit here and there. I think we've talked about it, but yeah.
So that year, Katharina Witt, who is a German ice skater champion, she chose to do a piece to the music, and she wore the red dress, the only piece of color. Right. And I went back and rewatched that piece. Mess.
Yeah.
Mess.
Falling apart. Yeah, no, it's true, man. Yeah, that movie in itself, I think above everything else, that's the one he's going to go down for as like brilliant filmmaking, across the board. It's not flashy, it's dirty, and the whole movie you feel really downtrodden, and that's on purpose.
Yeah,
you really, really feel it, and I grew up with the European background of my family growing up during the war. So I've heard stories like this before. And it was just the way that he captured it was like, oh my God, like this is, this
and
is
in black and white.
Which at first going in, I was like, this is going to be weird. But then after like 5 minutes, your brain immediately fills in color or whatever it does. And then until you get to that body on the conveyor belt in the dress, and I remember that moment. Like that was another moment that I'm like, I'm just going to start openly weeping here, everybody. So
I know.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. Like Spielberg, there's so many directors that I love, and a lot of them are lesser known. or they're kind of medium known. Maybe they're more art house type directors, or they do more whimsical things. But he's such a staple, I feel like. And growing up, you know, in with you, like the 70s and then in the 80s, the list is just so insane. The Goonies and Empire of the Sun and E.T.
Mm-hmm.
They're just
and it's all over the map, which I love.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
E.T., that plastic bubble scene was so terrifying, and I think it was so amazing that he shot it from the kids' point of view of how terrifying all of this would be.
Yeah,
and magical.
Yeah, no, it's he's not afraid to tackle new topics, which I really appreciate. And I know we're going to talk about this later, but he is the director of one of my favorite all-time cinematic experiences in my ever-loving life.
Which one?
Jurassic Park.
Oh, yes. I think we could definitely talk about Jurassic Park. When did you see it the first? Like, what were you on a date? What was happening?
Kind of quick and dirty of it is I was in high school. Me and my friend Will, one of my BFFs at the time, we were hanging out. We knew of the movie. We had heard about it. We knew there was a book, but again, it was before the days of internet. So we saw, I think we saw like a couple days into opening weekend, knowing nothing. We were kind of obsessed with it because we're both monster movie monster fans. So, and up until that point, the last movie we had that we can compare it to anything close was the movie Baby, which was stop motion, but that was the last dinosaur movie.
With the Brontosaurus?
With the Brontosaurus. Do you remember?
Nobody ever knows that movie.
No. And that was kind of the last, like that's how they do dinosaurs. And we knew going in, it was going to be, they're like, he has a thing he's doing with this one, it's really cool. And, we had seen pictures of the T-Rex and we had a poster of it, the whole 9 yards. And so we went in there.
Compared to Baby, it's like.
Well, because we had nothing there, we hadn't seen that until then. And I remember going in with him and we were kind of like, this is going to be cheesy with the dinosaurs. And we went in and just that opening shot with the Universal logo and all you hear are the insects and crickets and birds and everything chirping. At that point, I immediately knew I may not enjoy this movie because I'm already kind of terrified because they hadn't done that either before. It had always been the music and it was just this thundering quiet of this, and you're like, oh my God. And again, he's taking you and just shoving you into the middle of this. Hey, we're going to unload a velociraptor. What the hell is that? You're about to find out.
Right? What is a velociraptor? And then it's, do they feed him a cow in the beginning? Is that what they put in there?
Yes. They hoist in cattle, which I love that scene because it was a really good example of foreshadowing of that shit's going to happen later.
And it might be you.
It might be you. It might be the cow. It might be you.
And that movie has really stood up. It's been on a lot since we've been home with COVID. And so I've rewatched it now just this year, probably 5 times. Mm-hmm. And it still stands up.
Yes. And you don't even get to see an actual dinosaur until 20, 30 minutes in, something like that. And but in the meantime, you're following these people and you're completely, you're so wrapped up in their story of it's the kid come to visit his dad. And you just kind of forget there happen to be dinosaurs in this movie, but dinosaurs is the reason I'm seeing this movie. And then when they finally get to that T-Rex scene, and it's been 45 minutes of build, and you see that thing for the first time, I remember my stomach literally dropping in my gut and thinking he has an actual T-Rex that he put on set somehow. I couldn't figure it out. And just that terror, that primal fear that you're I know dinosaurs used to run around with cavemen, but you never put the 2 and 2 together like he did at that point where it's this is what it would actually be like if a dinosaur was real. And I remember leaving that movie in stunned silence. My friend and I sat there in the car for 20 minutes, just kaboom, just checked out.
And the roaring.
Oh my God.
The roaring is really what got me because that little girl's terror in the car is legit. I would probably just have a heart attack, honestly. Mm-hmm. But that roar is so earth-shattering. Yeah, we just never seen anything like Jurassic Park.
Mm-mm.
And it's not so dated. Even looking at their technology boards and stuff, and like the computers themselves, okay, fine, they're like boxes, but the costumes are not overly done. So it just kind of like lands you in this, everybody's in comfortable safari wear. Like there's not
Everybody's sweaty and hot.
Yes, again.
You feel that. Again, you feel that in that movie.
Sweaty, hot, mosquitoes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when you see like the dinosaurs on the plains, when they go out into the field and you are right there with them of just, what am I watching?
It's awe and wonder.
It is truly the word awesome.
Yeah, no, it really is. And it's, yeah, you feel what those people feel, man. And you know exactly how it is. And it's like, that's hard to do.
And again, John Williams,
such a beautiful score.
It just makes you cry, like when you listen to it. I have it, of course, and sometimes you'll put it on and it will get you. It's just so offending. And then the other ones were fine too, but that first Jurassic Park is the best.
I still want that park to open. I'm still waiting for that.
Would you still go?
Absolutely, I would. Absolutely. Because by now they had to have fixed all the problems.
But surely they did. I want to move over. So the background that we have on here is the two Phoenix ladies, I guess we would call them, from the Neverending Story. This came out in 1984. This particular scene was terrifying.
Yes.
Don't they have the lasers come out of their boobs, right?
It was something weird like that. It's been a little bit since I've seen it, but I remember it was something like, is this a kid's movie we're watching?
Right. Again, another movie that I don't really think I probably should have seen as young as I did, but two interesting things that came out of this movie. One, totally traumatized from the horse in the Swamp of Sadness.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he cannot save him because he's so sad that the horse dies. The horse is so depressed in the Swamp of Sadness that he dies, like traumatized.
How did that make it into the original? I don't know how somebody wasn't like, we can't do this to kids.
And they did. And he's going, oh, attack! And you're screaming and crying. Like, I can't imagine being a parent watching this with my kid. Like,
well, you have had that experience. I'm sure you remember that, watching that with my daughter.
That was also a Spielberg film. Did you know that? Land Before Time?
Land Before Time. Yes, that's true. That is a Spielberg film.
So real quick, before I explain the trauma of that movie, the other thing that happened in the Neverending Story was kind of my first real crush, which was on Atreyu. And
yeah.
He was so handsome, and I just remember loving him. And then the princess at the end, I emulated her endlessly. I would go in my mom's jewelry box and steal necklaces and like put them on my head. So I would wear like a little crown and I'd be like, Bastion, say my name, like over and over again.
I used to do the same thing.
Yeah, I know you did. Stole your mom. I know her pearls. But yeah, I was babysitting, or no, it wasn't. You were outside. And I was inside watching Land Before Time, which I found very upsetting as a little kid, but it's so good. And so I was like, oh, well, let Bix watch this, your daughter. And so we're watching it, we're going along. And she'd seen like The Lion King and all of these other films where people die. Like usually it's mom, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But The Lion King, the dad. Oh, no, usually it's the dad. And the one she had seen, because she had seen The Lion King and Mufasa dies. And and so when the mom dies in Land Before Time, she was so upset. And I said, it's okay, just wait, and she's going to come back. And she comes back as a ghost and she, saves them from the Tyrannosaurus Rex. And she was like, is she coming back for real? And I was like, well, no, she's a ghost dinosaur now, so she's helping them along like Mufasa does. Remember him? Okay. Like she wasn't real sure about what I was telling her. She thought I was lying. And then at the end, they get to the Green Valley and everybody shows up and they're like, oh, hey, mom, hey, dad, hey, mom. And then Littlefoot, it's just his grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no mom. She lost her mind.
I remember that.
Oh, she was like inconsolable. And she was like, Maggie, I thought you were lying. Where's his mom? And I was like, Bryan, I think we have an issue. But look how visceral that movie was for her. She wanted to destroy all the DVDs in the whole world.
She did. She did.
So no other kids would be sad.
And I very distinctly remember that conversation because at some point after that, she had the case or the DVD, but she came up and she brought it to us and it was like, we need to throw this in the trash so nobody can ever watch it again. And then we were like, well, hang on, there's more of these out there. And the look on her face of like, whoa, more of these?
What are you talking about?
Like, and then like she was legit mad kind of at us for like why didn't you tell me this? You know?
Yeah, I mean the power of movies is very real, and I mean that movie came out in the the late 80s or something, and again still had so much power and effect over a little girl. It was so good. I did not realize until recently that the director of Neverending Story is from the Netherlands. And he did Das Boot and Outbreak, Air Force One, Troy with Brad Pitt. Like no idea that he went on to do those things.
Yeah, no, he's done a bunch of work.
Wolfgang Peterson.
Yes, he did do Das Boot. Actually, that's right, he did. One of my other speaking of kind of tailing on Dutch directors, one of my favorite Dutch directors of all time is Paul Verhoeven.
Oh yeah.
RoboCop, of Total Recall, Showgirls.
Like how random is that he has this extremely violent film career, right? And then Showgirls.
I saw Showgirls in the theater. By the way, I was one of the 3 people who went to go see it. So that's how committed I am. No, Paul.
Did it color your vision of moving to Vegas? Like, did you
no, it never. No, those two things never crossed for whatever reason. Because I was just like, oh, he's just making up a story. But like when I got here, it was like, oh, this is actually like kind of how it runs a little bit, kind of like.
I always looked for her apartment because it was so seedy, and I always would drive over by the MGM on that little back street, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's that apartment. I have no idea.
Oh yeah.
But it was so downtrodden that I was like, that's got to be it.
Oh yeah. And his one of his earlier movies, RoboCop, is one of my favorite like all-time sci-fi movies, and that was the first time in a movie theater that I felt very uncomfortable around the villain. Like really, like that villain in that movie, like was so well written. It's Kurtwood Smith from that '70s show, the dad from that '70s show. But I remember watching that movie, and it was just, first of all, a gore fest.
So violent. Again, why did I see that as a kid? So inappropriate.
You know, and I think like I snuck in with my friend Chris Lobrunner. We went to the snuck in and saw. But I remember like watching it, like oh my god, this is so over the top, blood, gore, soaked. But at the same time, again, I'm engaged in the people within the movie, and I'm like, okay, like I kind of want to find out what happened to this cop they blew to, smithereens, And the other thing about that I appreciate about RoboCop is the tech in that movie holds up pretty well today, in accordance to most movies. We still have like the cell phones, the trackers, and the data pads and everything. So I was like, yeah.
Well, Total Recall too. We just recently rewatched Total Recall, the original one with Arnold Schwarzenegger and a young Sharon Stone, which that one came out, was it the late 80s or like 90 or something like that?
That was like late. I was like 89, 90, something like that.
Yeah, and it's still, I mean, pretty much holds up, except when they go outside of the ship, and they start to melt. That you can tell those effects are still pretty good, but those are the only things that it's a little bit aged, but you still are engrossed in the story and everything. It's all the double crossing, and I liked Total Recall a lot. I haven't seen the new one.
It was good. It was good. It's definitely not. I definitely still like the first one better, but it was good for what it was.
Did you ever see Legend, Ridley Scott's?
Yes, both versions, Tangerine Dream and the other version. Yeah,
that is definitely one that I grew up watching a lot. I love unicorns. I get this obsession, obviously behind me. I get this obsession legitimately from my mom, and and so we grew up watching Legends a lot. And when I go back and look at it visually, I can see where it left such a huge impression on me, because there's so much dew and sparkles and etherealness and the goblins, and when she becomes the Dark Princess, and then you have the fairy who is not a nice fairy. She's like a sprite and stuff. And then, of course, there's Tom Cruise, but to me, he wasn't even the biggest part of that movie.
No, he's such an afterthought in that movie, even though he's the main protagonist. You're just like, yeah,
it's Tim Curry, that is.
Yeah, and let's talk about Tim Curry's role in that movie for a moment. I feel his portrayal of Demon Devil, the Darkness, I think is his name. Again, it's one of those iconic moments that you see other movies from then on try and recreate that, that first time you see him, you're like, oh my God, I mean, it's huge, it's massive, it's imposing, and beautiful creature design too. As makeup artists, we can definitely appreciate all the hard work that goes into something like that. And it holds up to this day very, very much.
Oh, it's so good. And the unicorns, they have real horns. They're real unicorns.
Yes, they actually got real unicorns is what I heard.
I know. They got real unicorns. And then I think it's Blix is his name, the goblin.
Yes.
And those creature designs were unbelievable. It was just, there's so much when I go back and watch that film that sticks with me to this day, and how I design things or think about things.
Do you remember Meg Knucklebones, the witch?
Yeah. Oh God.
Terrifying. To this day, terrifying.
Yeah. No, I don't like her. I didn't like that scene.
I had seen Legend with the second score first, the non-Tangerine Dream one, I think is what it was. And then I went back and I watched the original variant of it. What it was, for my money, I like the Tangerine Dream score better.
I like the one that I've seen the most is like the theatrical release.
I think that's the one I'm thinking of.
I think that's the Tangerine Dream one.
I think so. Yeah. So, and not that I didn't like the score was fine, but I just thought that the Tangerine Dream score added kind of an element of weirdness to it that sort of helped pull you through this otherwise impossible land. It's like, oh, okay, I'm just going to follow the music,
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. And I think the 80s had some really great stories like that, where they had these really gross, and they weren't afraid to have really scary witches and goblins and things, because even in Neverending Story, they had the little house with the old people that he goes to, and they were creepy. And then you have, Willow has some, you have Legend. There's just so many that it was a thing that the studios were producing then that left a mark. I mean,
oh, absolutely. And it's the 80s, at least the late 80s, were full of the really good, fantastic, fantasy movies. Willow's another one that I love to watch.
Oh, Willow's great.
It's, Val Kilmer, amazing.
Oh yeah, I even wrote down, because we've been talking about kind of more serious films, and I wrote down a couple of comedies that were great in the 80s as well that we watched repeatedly. One being Top Gun and Mr.
Top Gun. Yep.
I mean, what do you say about Top Gun? It's just.
I think Top Gun was my kind of like sexual awakening with Kelly McGillis back then when she's making out with like Tom Cruise. And I remember that was the first time in a movie that I'm like, I should not be in public right now. like I remember that because however, but yeah, it's great, great movie all the way across.
Berlin singing "Take My Breath Away," and then that scene, and they're all mad and fighting. And watching it as a kid, I remember specifically thinking like, it's really kind of weird. Like he sticks his tongue in her face.
Changed my world. Changed my world.
I remember thinking that, and then later I was like, "Oh, that's hot." But
oh yeah, and then later I was very disappointed to learn out that making out doesn't always go like that.
No, and it's definitely not as hot as it would have been with Top Gun, Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Even though I really liked Goose, I was a funny story about Top Gun. So there still are people in the world that have not seen Top Gun, and our friend Jenny Lee was one of them. And so we're like, oh, you have to watch it. You have to watch it. And so she came back into the shop at Ka. She was like, mad. And she said, nobody told me about Goose. How could you not tell me about Goose? And I was like, nobody can tell you about Goose. Like you
have to find out on your own.
Watch it and then go through all of those emotions like the rest of us.
Like the rest of us, like normal people. Like cry your eyes out.
Yeah. But you have also movies like Big, which didn't Bix just see pretty recently?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's so great. And Karate Kid and
Karate Kid's another. Yeah, Karate Kid's another one that I was really surprised by. Like, I remember leaving the theater. I was like 13, 12, something like that. I remember leaving the theater like, I can kick anyone's ass.
All you have to do is a crane kick.
All I got to do that. That's all I got to do.
So we just rewatched Karate Kid just this last week. It was on TV. Yeah. And the end scene, and maybe you need to go back and rewatch this so you can, or somebody that knows karate. But I feel like, you know, he did the crane kick and then everybody lost their minds and like ran onto the mat. And I'm looking at it from a sporting standpoint where I'm like, the referee didn't call anything. Like,
no, I know.
Why is everybody?
I'm pretty sure we're not allowed to be doing this, guys. Pretty sure we're not allowed to be here.
Are you supposed to be on the mat yet? Did the referee say anything?
And just stepping over the guy, he just took the hell out.
Yeah, just hit his nose, and Mr. Miyagi's great. Oh, so good.
I still think to this day, if I met the guy who played Johnny, I would not be able to not punch him in the face because I hated him so much when I saw that movie.
I know, right? And he was so handsome, but you hated him because he was a jerk.
And like that, that's a thing that you and I have discussed where it's people who have played roles in movies or television that have played villains that are so despicable that you're like, I can never meet you in real life because I'm going to hate you.
Rob Roy, the villain in Rob Roy.
Tim Roth. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, Tim Roth. And then what's his name in Pretty Woman?
Oh, George Alexander Jason Alexander from Seinfeld.
Hate him.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I'm like, you're not funny. You tried to hurt Julia Roberts.
I still don't think I could see the kid from Game of Thrones who played Joffrey without just slamming him to the ground. Probably get my ass beat by security, but I'm not going to do it, but I'm just like that says something. Like that says you did your job as an actor for me to just hate you that much, you know? Yeah. And it's, you know, villains, they're a lot of fun. The well-written ones are the ones you carry with you for your lifetime where it's like, oh man, you just go over the thing that, you know, the guy from, Alan Rickman from Die Hard, Alan Rickman is Snape. Same thing. You carry that, like, I can't meet you and not have that association.
But then he's also the villain in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which is one of my favorite all-time films. And he's like the most lovable villain in that one, he's so amazing, and they gave him so many wonderful lines. And I'm gonna cut your heart out with a spoon, and no more Christmas. And what I would not give to have Alan Rickman's talents back. And
yeah, he was. Yeah, he was. It was a rough one to lose with him because again, he's done a bunch of stuff. I can't even think off the top of my head, but Galaxy Quest, one of the funniest things I've seen in the sci-fi realm for a long time, where he's the alien with the headpiece falling off. And I love that when you have actors that are I can play this really epically role in one direction or the other, and then I'm gonna turn around, I'm gonna do something completely goofy, and you're gonna love it.
Yeah.
Not all actors can make that switch.
Yeah, he's amazing. And, he's in Love Actually, which is one of the best movies ever. And he has that whole scene with Mr. Bean that he plays the straight guy in that scene because Mr. Bean is so ridiculous trying to wrap the present and do the stuff. And Alan Rickman's timing is so impeccable with him. And he just did a movie, this fast forwards a little bit, but if people haven't seen it, one of his last films in 2016 was called A Little Chaos that he directed. And I'm obsessed with it. I've seen it about 7 times already.
I'll have to watch it.
Oh, it's just gorgeous. And he plays King Louis, and it's about the building of Versailles. He's the king. And then it's Kate Winslet and Matthias Schoenaerts and Stanley Tucci's in it. The cast is unbelievable. But just on the note of Alan Rickman, for people to have a little tiny bit of his last work, do you have any recollection of seeing Dirty Dancing?
No, I don't remember seeing it in the theater. I have seen it. It was good. It was amazingly good. When I saw it, I was okay, I can see why this, stood the test of time like it did. Another movie with iconic lines, iconic imagery.
Nobody puts baby in a corner. I had a Johnny Castle poster. I had a Patrick Swayze Johnny Castle poster in my room.
Nice. I think I had a Point Break poster in my room. Another great.
We were just talking about Point Break the other day because League of Their Own was on, and Lori Petty is in League of Their Own as Kit. And she was so badass and amazing in Point Break as the girlfriend that went between Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze. How fantastic is that movie?
I love it. It's visceral. It's dirty. It's aggressive, and it doesn't make any. It doesn't try and make itself pretty, which I like. It doesn't try and glamorize things to the point where they're acceptable for the movie. That's a great movie. And being a surfer, of course, that whole aspect of it, just watching those scenes on the big screen, you're just oh man, again, you feel that guy's going to die and they're going to film it and I have to watch it.
They're going to film it. You were a little bit older than me when Heathers came out. Did Heathers leave an impression on you? I know Christian Slater was such a dark film. And
Heathers is incredibly dark.
Right? It's so dark. And so I was 8 when it came out. And I don't think I saw it right when it came out. I think I was more 10 or so. Again, still too young to see it.
Oh, yeah.
But it came out in 88. And I just wonder, as a older kid watching it, if you remember being oh my God.
I remember because I saw it late. I think actually Renee reintroduced me to it. We sat and watched it a while back, and I remember even now watching it, and I'm you could never make this movie today.
No,
you absolutely not. Especially not in this climate and everything like that. And it's interesting because I find myself when I was watching it, I literally had to rewire my brain to put myself in the back then when it wasn't, school shootings and kids and the suicides and all this other stuff, and it's an amazingly dark movie, amazingly dark.
That's an interesting train of thought, though, because I think that there's a lot of movies that were made in the 80s, specifically 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink. There's quite a few of them that while they focus on like the marginalized kids, there's still Porky's, there's still language and stuff in there that would not be acceptable today.
Oh God, no.
But those movies are so iconic for what they do and how they portray the kids in high school and the cars and Nerds. Remember the movie Nerds? Like
you could never do that movie now. Never.
Right. So much sexual harassment.
And that's always interesting to me is going through and rewatching movies you remember through the lens of where we are today. And like part of me, like going into these movies, part of me wants to be like, no, people just being like hypersensitive and stuff like that. And then I watch them, I'm like, nah, this shouldn't have made it back then. Like, and the 80s were kind of like this lawlessness of like Wild West as far as like how violent, how much nudity can we put in there, And we don't really do that anymore, I mean, we do, but not to the scale that we do. They're not major film releases, things like that, But a lot of the 80s movies are like that.
I wonder too, back during World War II, they had the War Production Board in Hollywood. And so that is what went through mainly to make sure that everything shown America in a positive light. So that was the censorship that was in place then. And so I feel like after World War II, and I'll have to do some more research on this, but that started to loosen up. And because they had so many restrictions for so long, I feel like when those new filmmakers came along, those restrictions weren't there as much. And so they felt like they could kind of continue to push that envelope until the 90s and in the late 80s. And you had, Reaganism and all that kind of stuff. And they tried to start reining it in again. But yeah, there was this period in the 80s, the 70s and 80s that, man,
you could get away with a lot. Yeah.
I'll have to look into that. I wonder if my hunch is correct on that. And if anybody's watching and has insight, let me know.
Yeah, no, it's and the director who kind of, for me at least, shifted, because I remember seeing that trend where it's like, okay, like we're kind of in like the 90s now, we're sort of cleaning up our act, trying to be a little more responsible with our portrayal of stuff. And, all these kind of studios, directors coming on board and sort of cleaning up their act. And then came Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
And I realize he's a little later on down the line. He's more 90s, but I still remember like watching Reservoir Dogs for the first time. And again, going into it, like I can deal with blood and gore and violence. I've seen all these movies. And I remember watching that movie and like we had, like, it wasn't even the credits yet. It was just the diner scene where they're just sitting around chit chatting. And I remember feeling like I was in a situation I had no business being. I didn't want to know more about these people because I'm like, the things they tell me and the undertones in which they're saying it are terrifying. I don't want to know what those undertones means. And like, I remember several times during the movie thinking like, I'm going to be okay with getting up and walking out because
I'm really uncomfortable.
I'm really uncomfortable. And like it stayed with me for a number of weeks. And just, again, Tim Roth, another great role for him. And we got a bunch of really good actors out. We got Buscemi, Madsen, but it was just interesting because yes, you had this period of like sort of, cleaning up your act. And then like along comes like Tarantino and is like, no, like I'm going to do this. I'm going to make you uncomfortable. I'm going to put you in situations that you do not want to be in.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a shift from there. And then like from there, kind of a bunch of, directors try to imitate that, some with degrees of success, but
I think it would be really interesting for us to delve into on the next segment into kind of Tarantino, the mid to late 90s. You have True Romance, you have California, you have
I love California.
right? True Romance with Gary
Brad Pitt is
Oldman.
terrifying in that. Another great Brad Pitt movie, True Romance.
Yeah. Yeah, he's great in that one. Gary Oldman is Drexel. Like, it's True Romance is phenomenal.
True Romance is phenomenal.
But I think that would be a really fun trip to go down and kind of examine and compare and look at those films and see what was happening in the 90s that kind of went along with the, the change in the music and the grunge. That whole, we kind of came out of shiny, bubbly 80s and early 90s and just went real dark. But the 90s brought some amazing films. But before we go, the very end of the 80s also brought us Tim Burton, because I did not realize that Beetlejuice came out in 88 and Batman came out in 89.
And Pee-wee's Big Adventure came out in 1986.
Right? Like he kind of comes in here in the late 80s and is such a game changer.
Oh, absolutely, man.
Aesthetically, and his team behind him. I remember seeing Batman in the movie theater. I just remember loving Jack Nicholson so much. Like, Michael Keaton was fine. Like, I was like, oh yeah, you're a great Batman. But I am all about the Joker in this. I thought he was so phenomenal. And I
nailed it.
Here.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Tim Burton's another one we could do a whole entire show on. Yeah. And I do remember hearing he was going to be directing the Batman movie, which I was just kind of getting the comics then. And it was right out of Beetlejuice. And then they were like, oh, and Michael Keaton's going to be Batman. And I remember thinking, even back then, like, I was like, wait, what? Like, you're kind of like, I don't know how this is going to work. And then, again, pre-internet, there was no online, fandom, any of this stuff. So you just went in blind and saw what the trailer had to show you. And then, that was the only info you had. And then going in and seeing that, and you're just like, it
was great.
It was so perfect. It was so perfect. And I love the Joker as a character, but I like that Jack Nicholson was the first one to really take it from like the wacky party clown to like the uncle who has a gun and is a little bit off.
There's something wrong with him.
Wrong with them,
Yeah. Where I remember there was the scene, and he's sitting in his apartment or something, and he's cutting out all the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all the pictures.
Like a normal person, yeah.
Yeah, like you do. He's just scrapbooking. He's early scrapbooking. But I remember that scene being so uncomfortable. Because she came in from shopping and she's like, oh, da, da, da. Her voice is all like, oh, what are you doing? And I just remember being like, you should go.
You shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here as an audience member. You definitely are in the movie and should not be here. Yeah.
He's having a moment. Like, this is not okay. And as a kid, not really realizing what all of that meant, it is those first alarm bells that you're kind of like, you need to go. Something's very wrong here. But the aesthetic of Batman was so fun. I remember lots of like purple and checkers and lime green and
it was just massive. The world felt massive.
Yeah.
Like, it felt massive, but at the same time, it felt like oppressive, where it just all the buildings are covered in grime and
dark
and just sort of looming over you. It like the direction they went with it, like it really, like, it was brilliant. It was really, it was really brilliant. It's one of my favorite, superhero movies, and an early one, very early, 87. So
yeah, it was very young. There's just so many movies that. And I'm looking at my list in front of me, and I'm pretty much still own the DVD. I am not even kidding. Probably like 90% of these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love DVDs, and people make fun of me for keeping them. But you know what? Now that I live kind of out in the sticks where the Wi-Fi signal is not as good, I have watched my DVD movies more in this past year than I have in the last decade because we have no internet.
Yeah.
Here and there. It's just kind of spotty.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll keep my DVDs, and I keep them in their jewel cases because I like all the artwork.
Oh, the artwork's great, and especially in like the glory days of DVDs, where you would open it up and then open it up. Here, I'm going to show you my Aliens DVD real quick. I have it right here.
Oh yeah, I definitely buy like director's cuts ones. I have one of Legend, or it has like a metal case, or.
So this is the Alien DVD I have. Ridley Scott, another great filmmaker.
Oh yeah.
Look at this thing. Look at this. It's like 900 pages of. Look at this thing. It doesn't even fit on the screen. Like, this is how DVDs used to be made, kids. Like, they would like put all this effort, like, and it's beautiful. And that will make me buy a DVD.
Yeah, and keep it. Like, I'm not going to take that and put it into a CD case.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Right under that, I have another one that we haven't touched on. Oh
yeah, I have Back to the Future written down. You know, again, produced by amazing Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, and Zemeckis, who is another one who I love all of his work.
I know. Back to the Future. Can we just talk about that? We already lived through when we should be having hoverboards, and we don't.
It's like science isn't even trying anymore.
Like, come on,
get on this.
God, and I really wanted that holographic jacket and like the crazy sunglasses. What happened?
As far as movie trilogy goes, that is my favorite, and I think the strongest movie trilogy like I've ever seen. Like, it's just consistent start to finish. They're fun, they're entertaining, they're kind of lighthearted. You know, they go to some dark places here and there, but you know, you leave that theater or that viewing just thinking like, I just was in that world. You know, you really feel it.
And you have a great soundtrack. I mean, you're moving.
An amazing soundtrack.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And how can you not love him? I mean,
he's adorable. He's totes adorbs in that movie.
He's just like little bitty, and you want to put him in your pocket, and he's in love with Elizabeth Shue, and yeah.
Yeah, and Christopher Lloyd, another great iconic 80s actor, and another actor who has also portrayed one of the most frightening villains ever on the screen.
Yep.
In Roger Rabbit.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and his eyeballs come out of his head.
Not okay. Not okay. Not okay. Like, even now, I'm like, what were we thinking? Like,
yeah, that movie was great, and I mean, how many people want to be Jessica Rabbit for Halloween and stuff, and that movie was crazy when it came out because it really truly mixed animation with real life in a way consistently that we hadn't seen before. Like, we've seen it a little bit with like Gene Kelly and Mickey Mouse and things like that, but
Mary Poppins was the last movie.
Mary Poppins, but not for a whole film like that where he's just involved.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, and he just died. Really not terribly long ago.
Bob Hoskins. Bob Hoskins, yeah. He's another great actor who I really like a lot of his stuff.
Yeah, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Man, so many good movies. Oh, hold on, we have a. Oh, Tisha says hi. Love you.
Oh, hi, Tisha.
Well, I'm going to end today on this note that we will have more because we have so many other movies to kind of just nerd out about.
Yeah.
If you guys have any suggestions for movies for us to talk about, we have definitely seen them. So let me know. And if not, it's always fun to see new ones. But I think that in the next one, we might dive into the 90s and some Tim Burton and some Tarantino.
There's so much stuff there to work with. So much stuff.
We'll do the double T's.
Yeah.
And then coming up, we're going to talk about TV a bit in another episode with Black Mirror and Boardwalk Empire and Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah. I call that the era of this series. And that was like, I think Sopranos kicked that off where it became like this, like, you have to watch this on the night it airs.
I can't tell you how many times we stayed up way too late watching Boardwalk Empire and
Game of Thrones, traumatized nightly.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Black Mirror, traumatized from the first episode.
We'll have to do a whole podcast on just cinema that has traumatized us.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's a real thing. Pet Cemetery. I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about horror films. Oh
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know.
I know. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to having you. And I might have somebody else come in the mix on one of these as well to join us for our nerding out sessions.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me. I had a great time as always.
Okay, we'll see you guys next time on Behind the Biz. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today on Behind the Biz, Conversations with Artists in Entertainment. You can also check out this episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. See you next time.